What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about World War II, D-Day, but the Canadian perspective. And this is a perspective that we are just not taught here in America. So today, I really want to check out this video explaining Canada's role in D-Day, as well as there's some interviews and some historical footage from that time. Stuff I've just never gotten to see before, so I'm really excited to take a look at this for the first time. Let's take a look.
I feel very humble being here because I seem to represent most of the old soldiers now.
There are only 9,200 Canadian Second World War and Korean War veterans left alive to tell their stories.
Wow. 9,200 Canadian veterans from this time period? 9,200? Honestly, if you were participating in D-Day, I mean, that means you're almost 100 years old at this point. If you were 18, if you were 16 or 18 at that time. So that's really actually quite astounding to me. I think the point they're trying to make is that there's not that many veterans still alive from this time period, but even the fact that there's thousands remaining, that's pretty impressive to me.
One of them, John Preece. He fought in Europe in 1945 and feels the burden of history.
There's only a few left, and I don't feel old, and I feel like all the other guys. And now I wish all my buddies were here.
Yeah. Oh my God, what a cut. Oh my God, what a place to cut. He's this guy, this sweet man, is talking about, yeah, I mean, whether you're a veteran or not, that's just a fact of growing older. Life changes, and the people you love pass away and die. And then, of course, they cut to June 6th, 1944, Juno Beach, which I'm pretty sure is D-Day.
But at last it started. The enormous bombing and shelling of the coast defenses. We came in from the sea that morning with a terrific volume of firepower.
D-Day, 5:10 a.m. The guns of the Royal Navy battleship HMS Warspite were the first to fire.
I didn't know that they actually had video footage this good of literally D-Day, World War II. The ships storming the beaches. They actually have video of this?
The pivotal battle, the beginning of the end of Nazi Germany, was underway. Along the misty French coastline, 156,000 Allied soldiers prepared to rush an underwater gauntlet of mines and booby traps and to charge the German guns, fortifications, and barbed wire.
Unbelievable.
They landed in daylight at 5 beaches. Hours before, Allied paratroopers had dropped behind enemy lines.
Okay, this is the D-Day landing map. The Americans landed on Utah and Omaha. Canada landed on Juno Beach. Okay.
The 3rd Canadian Infantry Division, 14,500 strong, went into Juno Beach with 5,000 assault troops and 2,500 in the initial waves.
I can't even, I won't get into this too much, but it goes without saying, I can't even imagine being one of these troops, one of these Canadian soldiers landing on Juno Beach, World War II. You know, cannons, gunfire, explosions, madness, death, and destruction. I cannot even imagine. So that's actually really awesome that they have some of these people that they're doing interviews with in this video. That's really cool.
Those who were there remember the morning as cloudy, raw, and sullen. 6 a.m. The first wave of the Queen's Own rifles piled into their assault boats. Hector Elliott, a lieutenant at the time, was with them. He spoke to CBC in 1984.
Okay.
It was about a 2-mile run into the coast. And we spent those 2 hours bobbing up and down in these little boats, and we had seasick bags. So I suppose in a way it was a bit of a blessing because our minds were taken off the reality of landing on a beach by being ill, being very sick.
What? I don't think he's trying to be funny there, but that is a funny little tidbit. You're being sent to war, possibly in all likelihood, your death, or destruction or injury or whatever, and you're getting seasick on the way into shore. And to him, that's a welcome distraction from the terror of the situation. Being sick is a welcome distraction. That is crazy. That is such an interesting little insight.
6:15 a.m. The assault boats begin their long, slow journey to the beach amid heavy seas. Captain Eddie Goodman of the Fort Garry Horse Regiment led a Sherman tank unit ashore. He spoke to CBC in 1994.
Oh, okay.
It was a mixed mood. Some people were exhilarated, quite a few. Some people were pensive and thoughtful about what they were going into.
That's how you know these are Canadian veterans. They sneak in the about. No, not about the about. That's how I know this is legit. Some of these interviews are like 20 years old. That makes sense to me. Because if you were at D-Day and you were alive today, you are very long-lived. And kudos to you.
8:02 a.m. The North Shore Regiment of New Brunswick landed at Saint-Aubin-sur-Mer, while at 8:05 a.m., just to the west, A and B companies of the Queen's Own Rifles touched the beach at Bernier-sur-Mer.
I just can't believe we have video of this. We have video of this. This is real, actual video from the day landing on the beach, from the Canadian perspective. That's incredible to me.
Lance Corporal Rolf Jackson was with B Company when the ramps went down. He spoke to CBC in 1998.
I was hit and knocked off my feet. This would be within 15 feet of leaving the landing craft. And when I came up out of the water, there wasn't many of the section left. The section of 10 men, 7 of them were killed before they got out of the water.
You know, it's one thing to learn about these military conflicts, to learn and study them. It's another thing to listen to someone talk about actually doing it. How he got 10 feet out of his boat, explosion knocked him down into the water, I think. By the time he got up, all of his brothers in arms most of them were dead, just trying to swim to shore. And you wonder why a lot of military veterans can suffer from PTSD. It's like, listen to some of this stuff. That is crazy what Canadians did. Like, to fight for our freedom and safety, and even us Americans. Like, this is Canadians fighting for Americans. And there were Americans out there on other parts of the beach fighting for Americans and fighting for Canadians, and we're all fighting for each other. And I think not a lot of Americans appreciate this fact enough, that it was really, as terrifying and horrible the situation, it was really kind of a beautiful moment, at least looking back in hindsight, a beautiful thing. Canadians fighting and dying for me, essentially.
In the skies over Normandy, Squadron Leader James Stocky Edwards, one of Canada's highest-scoring aces, was looking down from the cockpit of his Spitfire.
The water was very rough down there. They were putting people off in when it should be shallow and deep, and they're going underwater with the tanks and troops with their gear on. But other than that, there were lots of good things, and the landing was a success. But there were a lot of suffering from it.
Jeez, the absolute courage to be one of these people, one of these soldiers that sailed towards this shore and got off that boat and stormed the beaches. The absolute, courage That almost doesn't even adequately and properly explain what it would take to do this.
8:05 a.m. Canadian troops reported being under intense fire, with the Germans lobbing 16 shells a minute onto Juno Beach.
Wow.
Major Charles Dalton was also with the Queen's Own Rifles and landed directly in front of a concrete bunker. He spoke to CBC in 1984.
Okay.
The man on my right was hit 6 or 7 times in his left arm, and I was not hit. If I had been in his place or a little closer to him, then I would have got those bullets down the center. But I did not get hit until I got to the wall. I got all the way in. But everybody to my right was a casualty one way or another.
This is insane. You know, I've had the privilege of being born in a time, or I was never part of the military. I have a lot of respect and gratitude towards Canadians, Americans that fight in the military. So it is extra difficult for me to even grasp what he's saying here. He was in a situation where gunfire towards him and his group literally killed every single one of his fellow military service members to his right. All of them. Just barely missing him. Everyone else dead. And that so easily could have been him, but it wasn't. I mean, what is that? That's insane. What does that do to you? That's insane.
Almost half of Dalton's company was lost coming across the beach. The Queen's Own took the highest casualties of any Canadian unit on D-Day, 143 dead and wounded.
Really? Hold on, I want to hear that again.
Of any Canadian was lost coming across the beach. The Queen's Own took the highest casualties of any Canadian unit on D-Day.
The Queen's... Are they saying the Queen's Own or the Queen's Zone? This is like a Canadian military regiment? Anyway, this one in particular suffered the most casualties.
143 dead and wounded.
Wow.
In a fit of daring, a handful of Queen's Own made their way up the beach and around behind German defenders, driving them back from the shore.
Wow, yeah.
It was largely the same story all along the Canadian beachhead, with the Winnipeg Rifles, the Regina Rifles, and the North Shore Regiment of New Brunswick clawing their way forward with tanks and artillery supporting them.
This is so cool to hear it from this Canadian's perspective. Never heard of these different regiments and groups from all different parts of Canada, the Royal Regina Rifles, and yeah, this is just, I've never heard about any of this stuff before. It's really interesting.
9 a.m. Bernier-sur-Mer was cleared. Local residents who had been sheltering in their homes during the Allied bombardment and fighting were overjoyed.
Wow.
They showered the Canadians with food and apple brandy, known as Calvados.
Wow.
Along the Orne River and the Caen Canal, Canadian
They did it. They freaking did it.
paratroopers fighting with the British 6th Airborne guarded the eastern flank of the invasion against a German counterattack.
Yeah.
Despite being scattered all over the drop zone, the 1st Canadian Parachute Battalion cut the bridges at Verivel and Robillon.
Whoa, the 1st Canadian Parachute Battalion. I didn't know about this. These are paratroopers that they sent in to like destroy bridges and stuff, sort of behind the enemy lines.
Sergeant Merv Jones spoke to CBC in 1964 about the jitters of his nighttime jump.
Oh, wow.
Well, I tell you, I was quite scared. And I even asked the jump master at the specific time if we could change places. But we'd been so trained in this light business, red, don't go, green, go, that he says, oh, no, don't worry about it. We haven't got time to change you. That when the red, green light did come on, automatic, due to my training, out I went.
Oh, my God.
11:45 a.m. As captured in this rare color footage shot on D-Day,
Yeah.
the 3rd Division deployed its reserves.
Oh, my God. This is, like, look at this. Look at this footage. That's what, the soldiers were let off in, like, waist-height water, wading their way into the beach. You could easily see how dangerous this is.
Infantry, tanks, and artillery in a second wave. It was the job of HMCS Algonquin and other Allied warships to keep up the bombardment on surviving German fortifications, some of which didn't surrender until late afternoon.
Jeez Louise, these are the biggest bullets I've ever seen in my life. I didn't know they made bullets this big.
On surviving German fortifications, some
Are you kidding me?
of which didn't surrender until late afternoon. Further out in the English Channel that day, Alex Polowin aboard HMCS Huron.
Now, our job, like many people pointed out to me, well, you guys were lucky. You bombarded the coast and then you left. Nothing like that. You know, we were in the Channel about 7 months. Our job was to protect the people that were going in for D-Day, their ships, their boats that were there. That was our job. To find the enemy ships that were doing that, that were coming down to do that. We did. We prevented them.
Yeah, that's certainly not something you hear about, even from the American perspective. You have all these different regiments and Allied forces storming the beaches. That's D-Day. That's a momentous event. You don't hear about the aftermath, having to sort of hunker down and protect all of that new territory from an onslaught of German resistance and counterattack. And, you know, at least that's not something I have heard much about. But of course. So, yeah, I just love these little insights that these Canadian veterans can give. It's amazing.
The Navy's other job that day, to evacuate the wounded back to England.
Right.
By the end of D-Day, Canadian casualties totaled 1,096, of whom 381 were killed in action and 574 wounded.
Wow.
A far cry from the 1,800 casualties Canadian military planners had expected.
Oh, they did better. They did better than expected. Less casualties than projected. So the Canadian military outperformed expectations. Very good. Very, very, very.
Noon on D-Day, German commanders on the ground had warned beforehand the invasion would have to be crushed on the beach. Hitler, believing Normandy to be a feint, refused to release his panzer divisions until late in the day. An advisor to German Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, Admiral Friedrich Rug, says by then it was too late. Rug spoke to CBC in 1984.
We knew that the battle was lost. You see.
When?
At once. As soon as a third front started forming.
5:30 p.m., the Germans counterattacked. Although bloodied, the Canadian lines held. It was a taste of what was to come. In the weeks that followed, Normandy turned into a killing ground. It took over 80 days for the Allies to break out and then sweep northeast through France, Belgium, Holland, and into Germany, helping to deliver a death blow to the Third Reich.
Yeah. What a prolonged attack. What a marathon this was. It wasn't just one day, like D-Day would have you think. And clearly the Canadian forces were absolutely pivotal in this whole, onslaught by the Allies. I'm so glad I'm finally learning about the Canadian perspective here.
By sunset on June 6th, Lance Corporal Rolf Jackson of the Queen's Own could look back at the beach and see the price of the victory to come.
I watched my sergeant, a Jewish lad, Freddie Harris, first out of our craft, never got out of the water. Johnny Gibson, my corporal, never got out of the water. Fred Eamon, rifleman, never got out of the water. Ted Westerby, never got out of the water.
Wow.
John Kirkland, Boynton, neither one of them got out of the water. Doug Reed, my number 2 on the gun, never got out of the water. Al Kennedy, we got Bren Gunner, never got out of the water. Doug Reed's brother, the two of them are buried in 6 feet apart at Benny Samar at the cemetery. These are people I remember. These are only my guys, my tent.
Jeez. Unthinkable, really. Man. it so much death and destruction, but those lives that were lost, as he puts it, never got out of the water, which means they got out of the boat into the water and never even made it to shore. But that wasn't for nothing. That was so that their military brothers could make it out of the water. And then, which led eventually to victory. So, yeah, it's important not to forget these individuals. I'm glad he listed their names because they, just as important as those who survived the initial confrontation and liberated France are those who died getting out of the boats in the water, taking bullets so that their other soldiers could make it forward. Still insane to think about. War is so crazy. So, I don't have to say how bad it is.
80 years later, a final salute. John Priest makes sure to place his candle atop the gravestone of General Harry Crerar, who led the Canadian Army during the campaign in Northwest Europe.
Okay.
This is too much. It takes me back to the old days. I think all these guys here. Don't forget, so many of them I knew. And many of them weren't much older than me, in those days. We had young men.
Jeez. Wow. I don't know. What can you say? I really enjoyed this. Again, a story and a perspective we don't hear about here in the United States. We focus on our version of D-Day, but we were all on the same side, fighting for the same thing, and achieved it together, fought for each other, and this really kind of showed me that in a very real, visceral way. So I really did enjoy this. Anyway, if you enjoyed this as well, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment with your thoughts on Canada in World War II, D-Day. That'd be interesting to hear about. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to Canada and learning about Canadian culture, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.